aspirational hero. Move that as move that aspirational move that as move that aspirational move that as move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that aspirational move that as move that aspirational goal. So the aspirational heroes need to be there. They need to be pure 100% from the beginning. They need to be at that unattainable goal of perfection and good and hopeful and inspirational and all of that. Move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that as move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that aspirational. Stop deconstructing heroes. Aspirational are cathartic motivational. Move that as move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that as move that aspirational move that as move that as move that as to aspire.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and yes, it's been a long time since we played Move That Aspirational, but I don't know, I was sitting here watching it. I haven't seen it forever and I was just cracking up at it, but it's good. Always need that reminder that we need to put the aspirational heroes out there. Welcome to everybody here. Welcome to another Office Hours live stream. Let's see. Welcome to Ghost Planet Max Inc. Of course, first, Big Al presents, my buddy Big Al there. Ghost Planet Max chatting. Enzolo. A lot of you guys talking about the whole Netflix Scooby-Doo series, which they're saying is going to be dark anyway. Like, why is anybody excited about this? I don't know. Not worth talking about. Eldritch fan, good to see you. Imaginative Hobbyist, Electric Barbarella. Final Fantasy fan, Darth Enigma, Zachary Barron, good to see you there. Visits Fizz Chozo's Corner. Dude, get a new name. Leia Plus Size, Crystal Ashes, Tom Spiegel. Great to see everybody. All the usual there. Crystal Ashes, thank you so much for the super chat. The 300 ISK, which I have no idea what that relates to in US dollars, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is that your first time seeing that, Crystal Ashes? Glad you caught that for once. Yeah, that was Stephen Cruz was this guy that used to be on maybe he's still out there somewhere, but he used to be on all my live streams, and I got his email address. I should email him. But he was a hilarious guy, and he was a musician, and he would do these he would take little spiels of mine from live streams and cut them into this, like, little music remix, and he would send it to me, and then I would just put the images to it and kind of syncopate it with that and whatnot. And he did a few with me and Big Al too, when Big Al was doing the Office Hours stream back in the day. It's pretty funny stuff. So yeah. Darth Numi says, the first time you're hearing about the Scooby-Doo series. I know nothing about it. I don't care to know anything about it or to learn anything about it. I just see the official headlines on Facebook everywhere that Netflix is doing a that it's been greenlit, that they're gonna, I think Greg Berlanti involved? I don't know. But a live action Scooby-Doo series, which is gonna go darker in tone, and so who knows what dark means. Dark could mean the whole stupid DC Comics Scooby-Doo apocalypse nonsense, or it could just be, I don't know, whatever. If you're excited about anything that Netflix is doing, then you should probably go get checked out. So anyway, yeah, I just don't care. I've got reviews tonight to talk about, TV, comics, and movies, or television anyway. And I'm having a blast. I'm having a blast going back at the old classic stuff. If something new does come out, then I approach it cautiously, if it looks like it's going to be any good. But I just I don't have any time for these people who are just like, oh, did you hear this news? Oh, now they're going to do this. And oh, did you hear about the new series that DC's doing? And who cares? Like, these people just want new content. I've said it before. They don't want quality. They just need new content. Doesn't matter what franchise it is. Doesn't matter who's making it. They just need new content, because all they want is the ability to talk about it, to go on their favorite channels and see who's talking about it and feel like they're in a community and And I get that. That's a, you know, a valid need to feel like you're a part of a community. But this is one of the ways that social media has really hurt our culture, because back in the day, if a movie came out and it was hot stuff, it was something that people went out to talk about. You know, you'd go out to the stores and you'd see the merchandising everywhere. And, you know, think about Batman 89 or even the Avengers, you know, 2012. You know, it was everywhere and it brought people together. Now what brings people together, it's just online, and it's not really bringing people together. It's just this facade of a community or whatever. And other people have decided how to prey upon you when you have that need. They've learned how to navigate their channels and so forth and such, and that you feel the more that you give them money, the more that you are making a difference. And I mean, how many people are saying that, God, we won, we did it, Snow White's a failure, and it's because of us, we did it. It's not because of these grifting channels at all. It is not. It is not. That is such a lie that they've told people. Anyway, yep. I'm on. After we was talking about not on social media, I'm on Facebook for my family and like old friends and whatnot. It's not a public like Facebook page for, you know, anybody or anything. It's just like family and old friends. I can share pictures of my daughter, you know. So I've got that. I left Twitter long before Elon Musk bought it. And I appreciate the fact that it's no longer the toxic cancel culture anymore, but it's still the way that Twitter's run. You put a thought out there and you're inviting conversation. And I don't do that. I don't even my YouTube channel, if I make a YouTube video about something, I'm not interested in having a conversation with people about it. Now, I don't mind if people comment. I haven't turned my comments off. You can come comment on my videos or whatever, but I'm not looking to like hear your thoughts about it. And let's have a conversation and a back and forth about it. No, I'm just not interested in that. If I want to get different ideas or different points of view on it, I'll research it, you know. I have other outlets and people in my life that I can converse about topics with. You know, I don't have to go to YouTube for that. And a lot of other channels, you know, because all the channels say, you know, at the end of their videos, but guys, let's continue this conversation down in the comments. You know, that's what I think. What do you think about it? You know, sound off in the comment. You know, they don't really care. They just want you to leave the comments, so it helps the algorithm and, you know, gets them more money. But anyway. I'm trying to think, you know, maybe I'll talk about TV a little bit first, because, you know, I've been watching in order the X-Files and Millennium, and reading the X-Files novels as well, in order, because I watched X-Files a little bit back in the day in the 90s. I was a teenager in the 90s, but I never really followed it. I didn't, part of it was, well, I guess, did we have cable even at that point? I lived out in such a rural area that growing up, we had like an antenna that got NBC, like the local NBC affiliate, and that was all. No Fox, no anything. I think by the time I was a teenager, we first had the big satellite dish, you know, and cable or whatever via antenna when it came along at first. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I didn't get into watching it, you know, in order. And these were, you know, I guess late 90s, you could really go out and maybe get DVDs of seasons or something, or VHSs of a season. But, you know, it's kind of pricey, especially if you're a teenager. So I never watched it because I also knew that it was a very long, involved story. And yes, there are episodic shows or episodes where you can just watch and just have one single adventure, but there was a long-form narrative being told throughout the series. And I wanted to get in on that from the ground floor. So I just, you know, it was always something in my to-do list that I get around to eventually. And for whatever reason, I finally started a couple years ago. I took a break from it to do my monster stuff and Western stuff and whatever, you know, but I've gone back to it. And I just finished season 5 of X-Files and season 2 of Millennium. So tonight I'm going to go and start watching the first X-Files movie, Fight the Future, which I remember being out in the theaters when I was working as a projectionist in the movie theater. And I remember that movie being on, but I was like, all right, I'm not going to watch it because I need to watch the series first or whatever. So I'm working on that. But in X-Files, maybe we could talk about X-Files if you guys are big X-Files people. I think my sense is that season 5 kind of closes out a certain chapter in it. I mean, there are many little mini chapters in it throughout the first 5 seasons. But, you know, we come to a real big kind of head with Mulder even questioning his worldviews and whatnot towards the end of season 5. What I love about X-Files thus far, though, is that it's the classic archetypal detective story. You have Mulder is the detective archetype. He's the one, like any detective archetype, they have to trade some mundane ability. They have to trade off some mundane ability in order to have their brilliant detective mind, in order to be able to piece things together and to see things that people don't. Sherlock Holmes was brilliant, but he was also a jerk and a drug addict, and all these kinds of things. Who was based on Monsieur Auguste Dupin in Poe's stories before that and had the same kind of issue, So a lot of times detectives in a detective story will have some sort of social skill deficit. Think about House on the show House. That was very much based on the Sherlock setup and outline, and he was a jerk to everybody. Nobody liked him, but he's brilliant. You definitely want to go to him if you've got a medical issue or whatever. Monk, if you ever watch Monk on USA, brilliant, incredible mind, but he's also terrified so much of germs that he can barely leave the house, So a good detective archetype story has to trade off something. And in Mulder's trade-off is that he's so obsessed with his mission, finding out the truth behind the aliens, paranormal, all this kind of stuff, that he's looked on as not being a serious agent or whatever, even though there are some people who recognize how amazing he is, So he's got that little bit of a trade-off. And then another aspect of the detective archetype is they have to have a partner or a cohort in some which way or another who's there to help the audience kind of bridge the gap between this brilliant mind and the audience who's, maybe not quite up to that level yet. And Watson was the perfect example of this. The unnamed narrator in Poe's Monsieur Auguste Dupin stories was that. But Sherlock Holmes stories, took it to the character of Dr. Watson. And Dr. Watson is a little bit obtuse, right? Supposedly, he's a doctor. He's got those medical skills that even Sherlock calls on, because Sherlock's not a doctor. But the partner is sometimes a little obtuse. The audience needs to feel like they're smarter than the partner in some which way or another, because the audience knows that they'll never be as smart as the detective himself, as Sherlock himself, But if you can feel like you're at least a little bit smarter than the guy that the detective hangs out with, then you feel like, okay, well, I'm closer to the detective, than I would be otherwise, So we're getting it's funner. It's more fun to follow along and trying to figure things out in that way. And that's been the case in a lot of these detective shows that popped up. Now, Scully is not obtuse. Scully is the sidekick. She's a partner. It's partner. I'm just speaking from the detective archetype first. I'll talk about how X-Files breaks those molds in certain ways in a second. But just keeping to the detective archetype first, if we're applying this kind of stencil over X-Files, then Scully is the Dr. Watson. She is a doctor. She's a medical doctor. And she's not obtuse, but she she constantly fights. It's kind of a joke of the show that she finds it so hard to believe, even after everything that Mulder shows her, everything that's proven, I'm blanking on the names of the titles of the episodes, but the worm guy that lives in like the water mains and whatnot, Fluke Man, I think they called him. Every time they'll see that this person has some sort of extrasensory ability, or this, the pusher guy could, force somebody to do his will or whatever. Every single case, Scully's like, Mulder, that just doesn't make scientific sense, and it's like, at some point, if this was real life, the little trick of the series is that Scully would eventually say, you know what? Yeah, this doesn't make scientific sense, but you were right about those last 5 things, so maybe I'm just gonna not fight you so much on this, and and they do that slowly throughout the series, but that's sort of the trick of it, because there is a little trick to detective fiction. You have to feel like you're somehow either smarter or more willing or in the know somehow than the partner, because the trick of it is that the detective always knows information that you don't as the viewer. You go read some of those great classic Sherlock Holmes stories. There's no literal way that the reader can solve the case by the end, because it's always some extra piece of evidence the detective pulls out in the end that wasn't available to the reader. And that's the key piece of evidence which fits all the things together, So there are tricks like that, and we have tricks like that in the X-Files show. Again, not the same thing. The X-Files show is, I'm not trying to reduce it to this formula. I'm just saying this is the formula it starts from. It starts from that basic detective formula, and it expands upon it quite a bit. And I'm loving that so far about it. I'm loving, of course, I love the paranormal aspect of it. I love the aliens, the science fiction aspect of it. It's great. You've got fighting again. You've got so many tensions, right? You've got tensions against the paranormal forces or alien forces, but also tensions within the government cover-ups and you know, they're FBI agents themselves. So they've got some measure of authority, but there are so many higher cover-ups from this agency or that agency and all these kinds of, you know, people. And that's, you know, that's part of the fun of it. There's also the really fascinating dichotomy at work with the relationship of Mulder and Scully, in that Mulder has this incredibly open mind. He's willing, as he says, I want to believe, but he needs to find evidence. You know, he needs to piece it together, but he's way more open to theories and ideas unless it comes to anything religious. Scully, on the other hand, is Mrs. Science. It needs to be proven to me. I mean, she's almost like completely materialistic atheist at the beginning of the series, but then she comes to reconnect with her childhood faith. And there are great episodes, like the, I forget the proper title of the episode, but the St. Owen episode, with the guy that she, you know, that was like a saint, you know, and he died. There was a scent of flowers on him and all this kind of stuff. Anytime she discovers things or has thoughts or stumbles into a plot of her own that involves the religious or the Catholic Church in any way in particular, you know, then Mulder's like, come on, Scully, that doesn't make any sense, you know, which is kind of silly. Like, dude, if you can believe in aliens, you can't believe in a god. If you can believe in these paranormal, all this kind of stuff, you can't believe in some sort of higher power, you know? Anyway, but that's an interesting, you know, it makes the characters feel more real because they're not just cookie cutter. They do have some blind spots and some abilities to see through, you know, here and there. And of course, the wonderful romantic will they won't they tension, you know, that's there from the very first episode even is a great thing to build on. And they build on it well in a way that it doesn't tire you out. I mean, even by season 5, I'm not tired by it because they've never really, it's there, but they've never broached the subject, you know, between the two of them anyway. Yeah, it's done well. Sometimes that kind of tension can be overtaxed and it can be, look, you just got to let them get married or not. And then if you do let them get married, people think, oh, that's crappy or whatever, it doesn't work. We're going to talk about that with Millennium in a second. But, yeah, so I'm liking X-Files. I'm going to start watching anyway, the Fight the Future tonight. And I'll talk about that. Let me get to some super chats here before I talk about Millennium, because I think when I'm talking about Millennium, I'll introduce what Millennium is to you if you don't know about it. But I think we're getting some good storytelling lessons out of my, you know, thoughts about this anyway that you can apply or agree with or disagree with, whatever. But let me get to my super chats here before I miss them or they get too far back into the thread. See, I got Crystal Ashes there first. Eldritch Fan says, problems with X-Files is no answers to the mysteries could possibly satisfy. And do you know where the full season 2 Millennium is? Archive didn't. Yeah, I just finished watching it on Archive on Internet. No. Okay. Just saw my screen blip. Yeah, I've got my here, let me drop a link in the chat for you if you want. But yeah, the Internet Archive, I've got season 3 all pulled up now, but I just go to it and I'm not even signed in or anything. And I just look in the search and I'll put, let's see if I can spell Millennium right. Season 2. Yeah, it's all on there. And they've even got the special features and everything. Let me see. Pull this up for you. It's a little hard to navigate in that it'll show you sometimes episode. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I just found the link here just doing a search. It's not the easiest website to navigate though, so I get that. But yeah, I'll put the link in the chat there for you. And there you go. I don't know if this takes you to the exact first episode, so you might have to scroll up to get to the first one there. But that should be the link to the second season. But yeah, the internet, thankfully, somebody uploaded it to the Internet Archive, and no one's taken it down, thankfully, because it's not available. I think they sold it. You can find it on DVD. They're not making them anymore, and they tend to be pretty pricey, especially if you want to get all 3 seasons. So, thankfully somebody put it online somewhere because it's not streaming anywhere. You can't even purchase it, you know, like go on Amazon and purchase it, you know, digitally. You can't even do that. So, Tom Spiegel for $5, thank you so much, said X-Files Fight the Future has a riff tracks, and all of a sudden I want to watch it again tonight. Yeah, I'm not big on watching riff track stuff, but I didn't know that. Sure, it would, right? So popular. Elder Fan again said it's a challenge to write a guy much smarter than you. Yeah, there always has to be that trick, that they figured this thing out, that nobody else could have or whatever. But I think, Chris Carter and his many writers on his team did a great job. Again, I'm only in season 5, so I can't speak to the latter seasons or any of the movies even. But they're good. All right, so I think if I missed a super chat, you can let me know. But yeah, you're talking about the X-Files episode where when Jesse Ventura and Alex Trebek as Men in Black. I don't think I've reached that yet, but you said you mentioned Jose Chung, that there's a similar episode, Millennium, where a character from the episode, Jose Chung, was also featured. Yeah, so Millennium, just for those people who don't know, I know a lot of you know what Millennium is, but it was Chris Carter, the guy who created X-Files, who's the granddaddy of it, executive producer, showrunner, and wrote a lot of it. He got a second series going with Fox, and it was called Millennium, and I talked about season 1. Season 1 is just classic in every way. It's so good. He's a profiler from the FBI. He used to be at the FBI, but it really, getting into these criminals' heads, got into his own head so much, and there were people taking pictures of his house and sending him pictures, and that started freaking him out. He didn't want to leave the house because he was terrified about his wife and daughter's safety. And eventually this group called the Millennium Group contacts him, and they're a consulting group. For a lot of murders or police law enforcement agencies will hire consulting groups a lot of times, and the consulting groups quite often are comprised of ex-FBI or CIA or police, detectives or whatever, who'd retired or just gone into the private sector. And that's what you know at the beginning of it. But it becomes obvious throughout the season 1 that Frank Black, the main character, he's not just seeing inside people's minds. Some of the producers for season 1 tried to say, we never said he was psychic. Yeah, you did. You can't lie about that. The episodes were very clear. He was seeing things. This wasn't just a trick of the camera so that the viewers could see what he was thinking about. No. Yes, he's very good at just getting inside their minds, but he's also got some kind of gift. He does see things in some which way. And that's really kind of maybe even too explicitly pushed in season 2, but in season 1, it's already there. So you can't deny that. Even his daughter, seems to have the gift too. They already established that in season 1. So, cause I watched a lot of the special features and famously at the end of season 1, Chris Carter had to go work on X-Files because season 5 was such a big season for the series. It was so popular. A lot of things were coming to the head in season 5, and he knew that he would be doing the movie right after it. So he had to work on the film. So he left being the showrunner of Millennium. He's still, his name's on it and everything. But Jose Chung and Morgan, Chris Morgan? I forget the Morgan guy. 2 writers and producers who'd done a lot of work on X-Files ended up taking over as showrunners season. They took season 2 of Millennium places that Chris Carter wouldn't have necessarily taken it. And I think that's very evident. And I think a lot of places they took it honestly hurt the show. I'm not a hater of season 2. I still think it's got amazingly classic episodes. It really does. Mikado, this episode about the serial killer. And this is at the beginnings of the internet and webcams, back when webcams would just refresh every few minutes or whatever, long before the days of YouTube or streaming, and the serial killer staging his murders on a webcam and whatnot. Fascinating, really well written stuff. I even like some of the kookier stuff. Darren Morgan, the Morgan producer guy's brother, who'd done some X-Files stuff, comes over, and my favorite thing that he did was the episode called Somehow Satan Got Behind Me. This freaking episode is it doesn't really fit Millennium, but it's such a good story. It's like an old classic Twilight Zone. You've got these 4 demons who are having breakfast early morning at a coffee shop, and they're talking and comparing stories of how they tempt people into damnation. Basically, it has a sort of a Twilight Zone / Screw Tape Letters vibe to it. Now, there's the common thread in the story is that Frank Black's the one that shows up in each of their stories as somebody who can actually see their true essence, sees them as demons, not as the people they masquerade as. And it's got some, it's funny, it's witty, but it's got really good poignant, moral stories to the story too. It's really good. So season 2 has some amazing episodes, and there's more to it than just the ones I mentioned. But season 2 of Millennium is a great example of when different writers come to somebody else's idea, they're always going to take it in a different place. You know, think about, I haven't read any of the Dune books, you know, past Frank Herbert's time, but, you know, his son and I think Kevin J. Anderson have written a bunch of novels, and I've heard all kinds of, you know, critiques of that, you know, and stuff. I know that a lot of other authors coming to like the Robert E. Howard universe, you know, and writing Conan novels or doing crossovers between Conan, this and that. Some of them are good, some of them aren't, but they all miss that wonderful vital spark that Howard had, you know. So there you get different writers coming to somebody else's idea or somebody else's franchise. It's never going to be the same. It can work out pretty good. It can go in a different way that's actually still a really good and unique way. That happens too sometimes. But I think Morgan and Chung really misunderstood what the beauty of Millennium Season 1 is its subtlety. It's kind of like this. It's like if you guys have ever been, if you're writers, or if you're a writer and you ever do workshops, you know, I've done a ton of workshops. I've led writing workshops. I've participated in writing workshops, and they're vital. They're really good. They're vital if you're a writer, you know, and you get together with another group of writers, whether it's a school setting or just a friend setting or whatever, and you workshop each other's stories. When you're in those settings, though, you know, somebody's story is on the hot seat, so to speak, and you go around the circle, and each person says some of their ideas about the story. They say what they liked and give you some sort of constructive feedback. That's how you get better at writing. You know, you need criticism, you need constructive feedback, and that's great. But there's a pressure when you're in a workshop. There's a pressure to always have to say something critical about somebody's work, because you don't want to sound like, yeah, it's a good story. I mean, it's just a good story. I can't say anything, you know, to change. It's really good. Because that's, you know, that's what your best friend who doesn't know anything about stories or writing, or your mom tells you about your work, you know. No, it's really good. I like it. Yeah, give me some feedback, you know. So there's this pressure for everybody in a workshop to say something. And sometimes you, as the one who's having your you know, stories workshopped, you really need to kind of get on the ball about reading between the lines when somebody's got a really good idea and some feedback that's going to help you, or when they're just sort of reaching for something to say. And one of the ways that they reach for something to say is they'll pick a character, or they'll pick a story element or a scene, and they'll go, I'd really like to know more about this, though. I mean, that was so interesting. We should really know more about that. I mean, maybe develop a little bit why he said that, because that was such an interesting thing. I don't know how much of that came through, so I'm going to repeat it. They want you to dig into more of the story. Please give us a backstory about this guy. Why does he believe that? That's really fascinating. Or, you know, well, tell us a little bit more about this, you know, this company over here. Why were they, you know, what's going on there? We should likely learn more about that. That's sort of the patent answer. That's just the easiest thing to say when it comes to giving feedback to somebody's story. Now, sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's true that you did leave something a little undeveloped and you need to flesh it out more. That's, you know, sometimes it's completely legitimate. And depending on the different writers, some writers, that's kind of one of their, you know, one of their blind spots in early drafts, where they just, you know, they assume the reader knows X, Y, and Z, and they plow ahead. And you're like, whoa, you need to explain this before you go farther. So sometimes it's legitimate, but you can see that in season 2 of Millennium, for example, it was almost like a workshop, you know, feedback, you know, coming to season 1 going, well, we need to know more about the Millennium Group. We really need to get in here and know more about the Millennium Group. We need to, hey, you know, Frank's got a wife. We need to see that develop a little bit and what's going on in their marriage. And these like really trite cliche things happen for the marriage. They of course they have to, you can't have a happy marriage on television. Some idiotic producer or writer somewhere says, oh, it's got to be problematized. They've got to be arguing about something. We need to have some kind of, you know, conflict in there, or it's not real. Baloney. That annoys me so much. A great example of that was the last season of The Office. The writers weren't allowed to mess with Jim and Pam's relationship throughout all the seasons. They knew this was going to be the last season. They're just busting at the seams to have Jim and Pam, you know, fight and argue and have a marriage trouble. And that's just dumb. It becomes off as trite. It's cliche, because that's all Hollywood can do with a married couple. If they're going to keep the married couple going, you know, well, they got to have problems, you know. And yeah, marital problems happen, but it's not like every couple needs to fight or every couple needs to have their marriage on the rocks at some point, you know? No, that's not the reality of it. So, that's one of the things that season 2 did, which was really stupid. And it always, you know, I talked about, Grimm, the Grimm show, which started out so strong. And then they made his wife just be such a horrible, insufferable, because she had to have her own thing too, and now she's feeling victimized, and now she's feeling this and that. You know, it's they just don't know how to write a real, true, you know, strong marriage, or even man and woman in a marriage. So anyway, so that's one of the things Millennium 2 did, which was unnecessary and kind of stupid and just, you know, was kind of boring to sit through. I mean, it added some tension for Frank Black. How am I going to take care of my daughter when I've got her part of the time and my wife has her part of the time? And they're not breaking up, but they're separating. And the reason they were separating was ridiculous too. That was stupid, but I won't give you any spoilers away. Because I do recommend you watch Millennium. Season 1's epic, and there's some amazing stuff in Season 2. Some of the episodes are so good that I would recommend sitting through all the crap. But they also over-explain Millennium, the Millennium Group. And then they've got all these controversies and things. And it was almost like they were trying to make the Millennium Group X-Files. And that's not what it was. It's not what it should be. It's also late 90s, so they kind of work in this stupid cliche Da Vinci Code nonsense, which is dumb. And, you know, yeah, you can easily see. And I think it's kind of known that Morgan and Chung dropped the ball on Millennium Season 2, because I watched the special features, the making of Season 2. And of course, all of the actors and producers and writers that they're talking to, they're being nice. They're being very politic, you know, and they went some really interesting directions and it was good and this and that, you know, but they also know that the season, the ratings started to tank. And then at the end of the documentary, it said, Morgan and Chung were contacted to be a part of this documentary, but were declined or whatever, you know. So I think, you know, they've got a career afterwards. They've had a career and they've done great things in X-Files. I'm not saying they're terrible. They're horrible storytellers. No. But this is just an example of where they really dropped the ball. So, they run up the work so much that I'm wondering, like, dang, how is Season 3 gonna? Because Chris Carter comes back in Season 3 and tries to kind of course correct it a little bit and steer the series back to the direction he wanted it. And the ratings just were so low at that point that Season 3 was the last season. But I'm really interested. It got a full Season 3, so I'm interested to see what changes Chris Carter makes, given what he has to work with from Season 2 continuity-wise. It'll be interesting. So that's my X-Files and Millennium update, my progress through them. I do talk about it occasionally. Get another super chat here. Let's see. Elders fan said, Mulder's attitude to religion makes sense. He challenges secretive authority. Having faith that things happen for a good reason is against his character. It's not just that, though. I mean, yeah, you could definitely say that in terms of certain things. But, all these episodes are fresh in my mind, and it's just every time it could just be a higher power. Even if it's a higher power that doesn't necessarily call into allegiance or legitimacy any organized religion's, belief. Like, for example, the one episode where the Nephilim are on Earth. Well, this is an apocryphal teaching. It's not under any one church's authority or any sort of systematic belief. It just has to do with some sort of supernatural, some sort of angel, demonic. And he's like, oh, this is ridiculous. You can't be believing that. And it's like, I mean, where's the line between that and aliens, really? I mean, you could, when you don't have any kind of church authority behind it, but I do see what you're saying. I mean, there is an aspect of that, definitely. My dear Sound Engraver reminding me that her story, this is my favorite short story I've ever read by Sound Engraver. Secondhand Sunset. She has it published finally. It took her forever to publish this thing. I kept telling her to do it, but she's got it published on Amazon, and I'll just share the screen, even though my daughter's thousands of items are still in the still in my cart. But I want you to see it because it's awesome. She's going to show it and talk about it tomorrow on her stream, but it's really, really good, and I want to share it here. So let me open this up, and there we go. Secondhand Sunset's amazing short story. It's not hard science fiction, but it feels like classic Ray Bradbury style or Charles Beaumont style science fiction. I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like a very there's a moral to the story, but it's not a moral tale or anything like that. It's really good. It's really really awesome. So of course we have to have a little talk about her author name, going back to her maiden name. But yeah, it's available. The link, she's put the link in there in the chat. It's like $2.99, and it's really solid. It's a great short story. So just doing my part to put that out there. You should definitely check that out. She'll talk about it more tomorrow on her stream as well. All right, looks like I got my super chats caught up there. I want to move on. And if you guys want to slow down and talk more about any of these things that I'm talking about, please feel free to I'll try and go through the comments a little bit after I catch each one. But I actually have 3 reviews to give tonight if we get to them. And I'll cut out the bit I talked about X-Files and Millennium there too. I got 2 Star Wars reviews and 1 Batman comic review. Let me see how far I can get. First, because I talked a little bit about this last week. I've been going through and reading the Jedi Academy trilogy. Kevin J. Anderson's Jedi Academy trilogy. I've got this really nice science fiction club hardback cover that has all 3 novels collected into one, which is really nice because I don't like just reading little paperbacks if I can afford it. I just finished the first novel, which is Jedi Search, which, as you can see, that's the biggest novel in the book. Trying to show that's the whole first novel there, and then the second 2 are divided up there. So it's a little bit longer than the other ones. We talked a little bit about it last time. A lot of people were telling me, "Oh, Jedi Academy trilogy sucks. That sucks." And so I was going into it thinking, "Yeah, but Kevin J. Anderson's such an amazing writer. I love his Tales of the Jedi. I love his. I haven't read everything he's done. Like I said, I haven't read his Dune stuff or anything. I love his DC Comics stuff that he did. I just or the characters anyway. Batman, Superman, Enemies and Allies. I'm a fan of his writing. So I was like, well, how can you write something that sucks? Now, I read the first novel, and I'll repeat a little bit of what I said last week because I understand where people are coming from with this. Now, people were telling me too that they don't like how the third novel ends. I can't speak to any of that because I've only read Jedi Search, and that's all I want to talk about here. I am going to start reading Dark Apprentice next and start seeing how it goes. It is a pivotal part of the Star Wars EU universe. Luke establishing his Jedi Academy and teaching his own students and creating a new Jedi Order, So it's a pivotal, piece of the history. It does feel like it's written by an amateur. An amateur who's really excited to be writing about his favorite characters. And it sounds like fan fiction at times. And I just mean in terms of like dialogue or pacing. We'll get these whole side adventures that could have been summed up that don't really add to the story, but it was just like, yeah, but we got to go hang out with Lando and, this and that. So 100% from a writer's perspective, it's definitely nowhere near the level of writing that, say the Thrawn trilogy or even Truce at Bakura was. Some people, give that book a hard time too. But I have to say, as a Star Wars fan, I just didn't care. I was there for every bit of it. I loved it. I was enjoying it. Of course, I wish that, some things had been done a little bit better paced or whatever, but I loved the characters, and for me anyway, I kind of shared the writer's excitement about this era of the universe and whatnot and all these things. And I don't know how much he'd written before this, but this was definitely older Kevin J. Anderson. He's come a long way since the 90s, and he's a very prolific writer. And so maybe it's just that this was an early piece of writing and he's really come along quite a ways. And again, I know some people apparently have problems with things that happened in book 2 and book 3, but I don't know anything about that. So don't spoil it for me. I'll talk about that certainly when I get there. But yeah, I will say that towards the end of Jedi Search, it does feel like the pace picks up finally and you're actually really having fun. There's so many cool ideas. And I don't want to spoil everything for you, but I want to talk a little bit about it. When they go to the world of Kessel, if you know Star Wars, lore a little bit, that Kessel spice mines are there. Han Solo famously did the Kessel Run, and so many parsecs or whatever. But there's this black hole near Kessel. There's this big maw, they call it, and you can navigate through them all, like navigate through the gravity wells of a certain place, like between the black hole and the planet or whatever. If you know, like the people with the Force, for example, you know, can sense which ways to go here and there. But if you go too far one way or the other, you get sucked into the black hole or pulled apart, you know, or whatever from the gravity or something. And there was a Grand Moff Tarkin had set up 4 Star Destroyers on this asteroid in this sort of like eye of the storm almost, in all the gravity wells and the black hole maw there or whatever. He set up, you know, on this little asteroid that's sort of in this like safe black hole, eye of the storm kind of area, in the middle of it. And these people were to be sort of sectioned off and just do scientific advancements. And they had piloted and navigated a way in and out to get to that point. But they had lost touch with Grand Moff Tarkin, of course, because he died at the end of episode 4. So, but they didn't know that. They didn't know that. And you get this Admiral Dalan, I think is how you pronounce her name, who is heading the whole thing. And there's you know, these were the guys that developed the Death Star and the Devastators, you know, from Dark Empire and so forth. That's a really cool idea. And the tension, the ways that we find out about them, and then the ways that they come back out to the galaxy and kind of serve as a threat, that actually felt like a really good way to keep the Empire as a threat around. That wasn't just, well, now this person came to power and they're going to gather up some people, or now the Empire's back again, you know, the Emperor's back again, or whatever. It just felt like a fresh way to do it. I don't know. And I liked the evolution of Jenna and Jason kind of growing up, being older, now actually spending time with Leia and Han, obviously, eventually here. So I liked the things that happened in it. It's just not written very well. And if you're just such a Star Wars fan and you've got to be there for this important part of the EU history, then read it. Hey, read it. But you're not looking at something, you know, don't take notes on this writing style to emulate yourself. And again, that's no slam on Kevin J. Anderson, because I dearly love so many other things he's written. I think for whatever reason, maybe he was just too much of a fan of the material, or maybe it was just him as an early writer. I don't know. It's not crap through and through. There's some good things in it. But story-wise, idea-wise, I had a blast. Just following it, definitely. So that's my thoughts on that one. And again, I know a lot of you are probably busting at the seams to tell me, you know, what's wrong with the second or third book. I haven't read those yet, though, so just let me get there, and then we'll talk about it, definitely. So let me see if you guys have anything to say about that before I move on. Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, the Science Fiction Book Club had a lot of great editions, and I try to do that, Elf Runner. I try to get hardcovers whenever I can. I'm going to do next week probably. I'll do a little tour of my EU book collection thus far, because it's growing and I love it. And I try to, you know, some books were just never released hardcover. They were unreleased paperback, but you can find library bound books. They're hardcover of those titles sometimes, and or you know, like Science Fiction Club editions and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. This is an interesting question just in general, but Nerd Wizard said, do you think nerd culture will survive when all is said and done? Well, what do you mean by nerd culture? Because nerd culture has become normie culture. I mean, that's it. And you got a lot of people pretending to be purist nerd culturists who aren't, who just, you know, like if you're a Star Wars nerd, that means you've read the books and you've played the games and you're in the comics. Maybe not all of them, but that means you go that extra step. If you're a Star Wars geek, but now there are so many people who call themselves a Star Wars nerd or a Star Wars geek just because I've seen all the movies. That's not a Star Wars geek. You know, back in the day, you talk to somebody, say you're a Star Wars nerd because I've seen all 6 films. They'd laugh in your face, you know? But nerd culture has become so mainstream that it's not really nerd culture anymore. So there is still real nerd culture out there to be found, but you have to look for it and you have to get past all the grifting and all of the, you know, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere, but it's just harder to parse out where it is nowadays. If that makes any sense. Those are kind of off the cuff thoughts about that. No, I haven't read Darksaber. And yeah, the Sun Crusher, the Galaxy Gun, all these world devastating weapons and whatnot. So yeah, let me talk about the other Star Wars title then briefly. And I'm not gonna ruin this either. So Big Al and I talked about this. We were planning on doing another Star Wars book study starting next month. We still are. But we had planned on doing Dark Lord, Rise of Darth Vader by James Luceno. We did Darth Plagueis a while back. We absolutely loved it. We were blown away. What a classic. It's so great. And I heard so many good things about this. And they, Al has to have an unabridged audio version for him to be able to follow along with the text and everything, because of, some medications he's on and whatever. And so we try to stick to those for right now. And they released an unabridged audio of this. Well, I need to read these stories first myself, just to have an overall general idea of what goes on in them before I can go ahead and do a book study where I'm really kind of going through a little bit more minutely. So I listened to the audible of it while I'm, reading my Jedi Academy. I listened to the audible version of Star Wars: The Dark Lord. It's read by Mark Thompson. Of course, Mark Thompson, the great, Star Wars narrator. He can do the voices so well. I am just not impressed by this at all. There's some great things in it, and I'll talk about what great things are in it. And I think if you're a Star Wars fan and you want to experience these great things, you should definitely check it out. I know I'm talking about some Star Wars EU novels tonight and not really giving them glittering reviews, and that's rare. But this just isn't that good. I was hoping for Darth Vader to receive the Darth Bane treatment. The Darth Bane trilogy, which I think came later anyway, didn't it? But the Darth Bane trilogy, wow, that's amazing, right? You're following this villain and you're in the villain's perspective. And I don't like stories where the villain's the main character if they're going to try to make him the protagonist or whatever. Like, I hate the Joker treatment, the Joker movie. In something like the Star Wars universe, though, that Darth Bane isn't going to survive. That Darth Vader, we already know his end. He will be redeemed in the very last moment of his life, but he will be redeemed. We know that. So we also know that he's like numero uno badass, when you first introduced to him, for the first time the world was introduced to him in New Hope there. So this book, The Rise of Darth Vader, Dark Lord, well, that promises to show how he becomes the great big badass. And that's in there. That is in there. The scenes that have to do with Darth Vader are great. It really takes you through, this newly minted Darth Vader from the fallen Anakin Skywalker, because Anakin's story is a tragic fall of a hero who will be redeemed one day. But, he becomes Darth Vader as almost a very different person, as Obi-Wan, isn't even trying to speak in riddles when he says Darth Vader killed your father. In a very real way, he did. But you get to see that transition, and you get in Darth Vader's perspective, learning how to breathe with these machines and walk with limbs that aren't his. And it's like, man, that really, there's a process of him really, because Anakin was so good with droids anyway, that he works with his body and creates a better one, an optimal one, and changes his fighting style with his lightsaber. He's not the energy bomb, athletic Anakin Skywalker anymore. He calls in the Force a lot more, but he's so much more powerful in the Force now. So it's, all of that's great. And the journey that Darth Vader goes on in the book is really great. You see what Emperor Palpatine, had planned for Darth Vader, why he needs Darth Vader. You get a clear idea of Palpatine's vision for the Sith and the rule of two kind of going forward now. It's not the same as Darth Bane's exactly, but it's but that just fleshes out the universe so much. It's so great. Here's the problem with it. That's like maybe a fourth of this book. The rest of this book is we have to follow these Jedi who somehow escape Order 66. It gives you some things like the clones. This is before the Clone Wars series and all of that. So in this, the Order 66, the clones weren't programmed to suddenly flip a switch and want to kill Jedi. The clones were programmed to always follow the orders of the Chancellor. And so when the Chancellor says, hey, kill the Jedi, you've got the clones suddenly asked to kill their companions, their fellows in arms, their brothers in arms, the Jedi who fought beside them, who've been their commanding officers for so long. And it makes sense that a lot of clone troopers in that respect would question that order, would be like, okay, yeah, but I need it explained to me somehow. How come they're worthy of killing so far? I need a little something more here. It makes sense. The Clone Wars series, the crappy Filoni, Clone Wars, whatever, there was great stuff in that series. But one of the things they did, which I hate to say it's an actual better idea, but it was like click in their programming, in their mind somehow, that it was just like it was unquestioned. We kill these Jedi now, you know, which is tragic because these are clones that, you know, would have come to have great relationships with these Jedi and so forth. So it's okay. All right, if you're going to make it to where they're just programmed to always follow the orders of the Chancellor, but they feel this conflict about suddenly being asked to turn on their commanding officers and, you know, these Jedi who've been their companions for so long. A lot of clones then, in that case, you could imagine, would question the orders, not refuse them, but you could see a lot more Jedi slipping through the cracks than did. In this novel, they try to tell us that Order 66 is just that. It's just that the clones are told to follow the Palpatine's orders, but only this one clone trooper is the only one that questions the order or delays a little bit and neglects actually killing his Jedi companions enough for them to get away. I don't buy that would only happen once. But so anyway, this Jedi Master escapes. He escapes with this fellow Jedi Master and her Padawan. The fellow Jedi Master ends up, you know, dying, buying it by Darth Vader at some point. And so we see this Jedi Master out there who's kind of lost his touch with the Force a little bit, especially in the years of the Clone Wars. And there's a really cool juxtaposition of his losing touch with the Force and trying to come back to some sort of center with it in his, you know, coming to terms with, you know, fighting Darth Vader or, you know, going after him or whatever. And Darth Vader himself trying to find his new place in the dark side of the Force. There's some really cool thematic things, juxtapositions and stuff like that that's going on there. But we had way too much of these Jedi. At this point in the story, in the universe, I don't care about random new Jedi that happen to escape Order 66 for a while. If they escaped and were any kind of count or any kind of, you know, went on to do anything magical in the universe, we'd have more stories. We'd find out more about them, you know, after the original trilogy or whatever. So I don't like that. And then the real nail in the coffin for this book with me is that Jedi Padawan. This was in 2005, and I'll talk about that in a second. This is before Lucino went on to write The Great Darth Plagueis. This is before Clone Wars gave us the insufferable Ahsoka Tano. There is this Jedi Padawan in this book who is amazeballs. She's just a Jedi Padawan, but she serves as the leader. She gathers all of these Jedi Masters and Jedi Knights, people way older than her, way more experienced than her. She starts putting out the feelers and trying to find survivors, and they all just look to her because she's a leader, and she's demanding that we go do this, this, and that. And oh, by the way, her name, not making this up, her name is Starstone. I mean, this is such an insufferable little biatch of a character. Now, I can't say she's a Mary Sue because she does make mistakes and she feels bad about the mistakes, but it's just like, I don't care. I don't care about this character that James Lucino is trying to shove down my throat. I care very little about any of the Jedi characters in this story because I wanted more of Darth Vader's transition. I don't care to be hanging out with these guys or whatever. A little bit of it's fine. A little bit of it in the thematic juxtaposition with him and Vader, that's cool. Fine, develop that. But Starstone, you can look at her. This was 2005. She really is sort of the prototype for the rabid Mary Sue we would get with Ahsoka and ultimately with Rey Skywalker and all this kind of nonsense characters. And Starstone, by the way, you know, she goes up against Darth Vader. A Jedi Padawan, mind you, goes up against Darth Vader at one point. Now, in the story, Vader's not too interested in even dealing with her. He really wants her master. He really wants the Jedi Master guy. And that's so jumps away from him and escapes. And granted, in the story, you can see that Darth Vader's not too interested in her. He would be, though. Like, you didn't sell it to me why he wouldn't be interested in her. She's a Jedi, too, Padawan or not. He would slam her down in a second. Why didn't he go after her? Why didn't he kill her? That's not explained. And now on Wikipedia, in our post-Rey and post-Ahsoka glory, you know, universe, if you go on Wikipedia and look up Starstone, she's also one of the only women Jedi who stood her ground against Darth Vader. You know, long before Ahsoka Tano also had to be able to stand her ground against Darth Vader and blah, 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 blah. No. That was kind of the nail in the coffin for this book for me, is that Starstone survived. That pissed me off so much. No. So I will never read the book again. I will probably go through and find some of the scenes that were so cool about Darth Vader's development and by the end and stuff like that, because that's great. But I don't recommend this book. If you want to go through and thumb through and just find some of the Darth Vader scenes, great. I don't know, you know, again, it was the 2005 mid-aughts, and we had all this crappy, messaging that was going to come on board. I mean, you don't need to write a female character like that. Why is the only female character you can write Filoni? That was Filoni's biggest problem. He can only write the all-wise, madam, mentor, matron character, are the not going to take no guff off of nobody. I'm super strong and independent and I do things for myself. It's like, enough of those crappy little characters. We've got so many wonderfully strong, well-written female characters in the Star Wars universe. Why do you keep going to this really tried and annoying archetype? And again, this came out before it, but I think you can see the forerunner of that in this character, Starstone. Didn't help that Mark Thompson does a really crazy, annoying voice for her too. So I don't know. That's just me on that. But yeah. I think I'm probably gonna have to save my Legends of the Dark Knight review for next time, because I'm at my hour mark and I'm also really wiped here. But I do want to go back in and see what you guys have been saying about this. Kind of check in with your thoughts of this. Let me see. Just kind of pop in here and there. Let's see. I could get hardcovers, but finding the old Star Wars EU books is tedious on my end. The Legends banner paperback is sadly easier for me to access. Yeah, and I'm not knocking people who just want to get a collection of the EU stories and they get the Legends books. That's totally fine. The only reason I, in my collection, I'm trying to kind of save my collection for sort of posterity's sake or something. I don't know who's going to take it after I go. But I just wanted to know that I've got a collection of the books untampered with in any way. Now, that doesn't mean that, I don't know of any examples in which Disney has gone in and tampered with the actual story about things they put out in their Legends banner. Usually the art's not as good, but, whatever. But yeah, they're readily available under Legends. Not all of them, but some of them are. So yeah, if you just need the EU books or you just want to read the stories, by all means, hey, go for it. That's, that's great. Get them however you can. Definitely. Yeah, I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody who needs to go buy the Legends one. Elfrunner says, this is coming from a guy who admittedly didn't like Dark Empire as much as the rest. I didn't either, actually. But I still see the good things in the story and what it did for the rest of Star Wars. Yeah, me too. Me too. It's like, I don't like some of these ideas. I hate the idea that there's still over and over again this big planet-ending weapon. It gets a little cliche, guys. But at the same time, it's Star Wars, and their Dark Empire was really wrong-headed direction, a wrong-headed development to take. But the EU does have a way of coming around these stories and kind of, at least thus far in what I've read, fitting them into the universe in ways that work. And that's one thing to be said for Kevin G. Anderson too, is that he was the only author, I think, at that time who was really trying to make you feel like a universe. He references things that happened at in the Thrawn trilogy, the Dark Empire, Truce of Bakura, references all these things, even the Courtship of Princess Leia, because he wants it to feel like a universe. So I think he might have even done more behind the scenes that I don't know about, but I think he is, sort of to be applauded for really trying to make it feel like a universe that gels together. But, anyway, I forgot where I was going with that. So, yeah, Sun Crusher, Galaxy Gun, they get a little silly after a while. But hey, in each story, I mean, if you suspend disbelief and you just go for a Star Wars adventure, you can follow it and have fun. Let's see. Ghost Planet talking about the Lego Star Wars games. Yeah, I played the original trilogy Lego Star Wars, and I think the prequel trilogy. Some of those Lego games are fun. Roan Shrine and Oli Starstone. Yeah, thank you. I couldn't remember the master's name, but yeah, Shrine. Roan Shrine and Oli Starstone is her name. Pass. Roan Shrine's a good character. And he's got an interesting arc. but I just wasn't as interested in following a Jedi in this story. I wanted a Darth Bane treatment for Darth Vader. Maybe that's my unfair expectations coming to the novel, but I just thought it should have been so much more because it's Darth freaking Vader, and you named the title Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader. I want to see way more Vader, you know. Yeah, Starstone. Wasn't that My Little Pony series? Yeah. What is this, a My Little Pony Star Wars series? It does sound like that. Yeah, I mean, you got Skywalker, Star Killer, you know, Starstone. Like, what? Oh. Yeah, precursor to Reva. Yeah. I'll have to seek out some other reviews about it. I'd be really interested to see what Matt Wilkins thinks of the book, because we don't agree. Matt Wilkins and I, as much as the respect as I have for him, I don't agree with him on every Star Wars novel. I didn't even realize it. I did a review on his website for blanking on the title now. The oldest chronologically Star Wars, you know, Force Legacy. No, I'm blanking on them. But the stories of, you know, way back in the before Jedi even used lightsabers. Somebody will say it there and I'll remember it. But yeah, I really like that novel. And he was like, who's this guy? It's this novel. Yeah, he didn't like the novel or whatever. So we don't always agree on novels, but I'd be really interested to hear what he says about Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. Maybe I just brought too many unfair expectations to it. I don't know. Senator says, think Thompson did her voice like that on purpose. Maybe. You know, Thompson's so good at voices. I read some reviews of the audio. Some people were saying they're not happy with his Vader. I was more than happy with his Vader. I mean, you can't sound like James Earl Jones. That's just, you can't do that, you know? So if you have to, you know, do what you can. Yeah, I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, though. Maybe. Who knows? Tom Spiegel for $5, thank you very much, said, on the topic of names, I kind of like the trend. Skywalker, Starkiller, Sunrider, Nomi Sunrider, yeah. Does this mean the main character in Tailspin was also a Jedi? Yeah, what was the name again? Wind, what was his name? Haven't seen Tailspin in so long. Only had one season too. Shadows of the Empire. Yeah, I'm really excited to delve into that, Bradley Renfro. Believe it or not, I haven't read that yet. I'm going to play the game first. I'm reading Jedi Academy Trilogy, honestly, so I can go play the Jedi Academy games, which I'm excited about. And then I'll start. I do have the Shadows of the Empire game. I have the Shadows of the Empire novel, and I have the complete Dark Horse collected Shadows of the Empire omnibus comics. So I've got all three of the different perspectives of the story they put out, and I'm excited to do that and give that its own, you know, thoughts or review or recommendations or whatever. Stephen M. said, you like Dark Empire to be interesting, entertaining Star Wars Easter. There were good things in it that I liked. I just didn't like certain things about it, or here's what I didn't like about Dark Empire. And no disrespect to Tom Veitch, because like Kevin J. Anderson, he went on to write some great stuff. He's passed away now, sadly. I think he passed away during COVID, so God rest his soul. But Tom Veitch, when he started writing Dark Empire, he didn't know this was going to be a part of this big Star Wars EU expanded universe. He thought he was going to be writing a sequel trilogy in comics. And so all you've had is Star Wars, the original trilogy in the 90s at that point, early 90s, I think. The last canon story you had is Return of the Jedi, where Luke triumphs. He even pulls his father back from the dark side. He triumphs over the dark side. So now, where else can we go with this story about this wonderfully incredible, aspirational hero, Luke Skywalker, who is really just, you know, the new head of this great, you know, universe and is bringing the light to the universe? What do we do now? What if we made him fall to the dark side? Ooh, that's interesting. That's not interesting. That's ridiculously, asininely immature. Stop it. Stop it. You know, but that's where his idea started. And even Lucas was like, oh, maybe a good idea. So that's what I don't like about it. Now, the way they played it out, it's not that cut and dry. You've got Luke thinking that he can kind of work from the inside with the Emperor and actually help people, and he does, but then also at some point he really does come to the, like, I'm actually going to fall to the dark side, and then Leia has to help him. So I mean, it's not cut and dry. It's I'm you know, strawmanning it a little bit, but just the very idea starting with that bugs the snot out of me, as somebody who understands aspirational characters and whatnot. but there are great things in it too. So I don't just hate it outright. Yeah. All right. Did you say what book you're studying with Big Al? No. Okay, yeah, this is what I'll end on, because I do need to wrap it up here. Thank you, my dear Sound Engraver. Yoda Dark Rendezvous is another book that's been recommended to me over and over as really quite amazing. So that is that's available for Al on Audible, and I have the hardcover too. So I'm going to read that really quickly now. I might just listen to the Audible, so I can do that more quickly, like in my commutes and whatnot, to make sure that it's something I want to do. It's kind of book review worthy. And then if so I haven't given the the full yes or no on it yet, but I want to try to get through that one to see if it's good. If not, we might start with the X-Wing books, because I really did enjoy the first few of those that I read, and they're available for Al on Audible, and I have great editions of them as too. So yeah, I'm gonna try Yoda Dark Rendezvous, and I'll let you guys know how that goes. So, all right. Is that my Star Wars name? Geek Cloud Kicker. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'm sorry I just don't have the energy to sit here and chat forever, but you guys are making some great comments and whatnot. I appreciate it. I'll be around next week again. I'll cut out some of the reviews from this, and I will get more of the comic books, Legend of the Dark Knight. And I'm still going through the post-crisis graphic novels. I haven't forgotten about that. I just had to get through so much Star Wars to try and get the book studies back on the roll. But I think Justice League International is the next graphic novel I'm going to go through, post-crisis graphic novels. That, continuing my Batman 90s stuff. So I'm going to keep going with all this stuff, but go rest. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.